Meeting to order at 10:01 a.m. Agenda item number 1, we will start with the pledges. I will ask Tom Watson to do the national and Summer Mandel to do the Texas pledge.
Sorry.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2, possible excused absences for the commissioners. All the commissioners are here, so no need for a motion. Agenda item number 3, opening remarks. First of all, welcome back to Austin. I think our very first meeting outside of Austin in Houston was a huge success. I want to thank the staff for putting it together. I want to thank the commissioners for going to Houston and not coming to Austin and helping that change. But I want a special shout out to Commissioner Lerner, Commissioner Woodruff, Commissioner Chance Brown for really reaching out and making sure the locals attended. There's nothing better than seeing them have to delay and bring chairs in. And so thank y'all for that. It's something that I look forward to doing again. I think it's good for the licensees, I think it's good for the shareholders, and I think it's good for the public to have an opportunity to appear before us without coming to Austin. Wow, what a summer. Busy summer. Not only vacation and kids and everything going on, but as you can tell from the reports that will be given, this agency has been extremely busy, whether it's the audit committee, budget committee, ESAC, broker lawyer, everybody's been busy. We've had selections for the inspectors, selection for broker lawyer, rewriting Legal 1, Legal 2, just a busy season. I don't remember a summer being that busy with that many big things to do, not to mention the people across the street that meet for 140 days every 2 years, made some significant changes that we have emergency adoption that we must do. And I know these commissioners will do a great job, but I also want to acknowledge staff for staying on top of those changes so nothing's surprised, and you'll see some of those further. I will end by saying we have over 236,000 licensees, almost 237,000. Of those, about 179,000 are active. Some are business entities. And I can say this after being here almost 5 years, I challenge any agency in the state of Texas to be as engaged as these commissioners are, or the staff are, as far as protecting the consumers and making this a great place to buy and sell real estate. And I just want to say thank you to the commissioners and thank you for staff for doing an outstanding job with everything that is handed to you. Y'all do nothing but exceed expectations. So thank y'all for that. Okay. Real quick, if you would like to make a public comment, please sign up in the back. Bring this up here, and if I get to your agenda item and I forget to call on you, just stand up and remind me because I have been known to forget things. Okay, agenda item number 4. We have some departing members of broker lawyer, and Bo Blackburn is departing along with Greg Glenn. Charlie Still is also departing as he is here. And I'd like to come up and present him with a certificate and thank him for his service. If anybody has watched Broker Lawyer, you realize this is probably one of the heaviest lifting committees we have as far as all the reading and proposals. And when y'all present something to us, you got to get it right. Because if there's something not right, we send it back to you. And I thank you for your service because I know it's not easy. And so thanks again for your service. And be glad to take any words if you like to. All right.
it was a fun 12 years.
Wow. Okay. I don't know about fun as well, but
I think it was more
like a sentence.
Yeah, more like a sentence. Okay, with parting members, there is the process of appointing new members. And the selection committee, myself, Commissioner Woodruff, Commissioner Hargraves, who am I missing? That's it. Had almost 50 applicants, and it was busy getting them all selected. They came up with the following choices, and I will read these, and then I would love for a motion to accept these recommendations. Appointed to broker lawyer will be Melissa Haley, Christy Tatum Jensen, with alternate members Tim Garrett and Jonathan Lindley in that order. And I would like a motion to accept these recommendations.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion made by Commissioner Pena, seconded by Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any against? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 6, appointments to the Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee. Again, we had a number of applicants. On that, we had, I just totally drew a blank. Yeah, Commissioner Lerner, myself, Lee, and Commissioner Pena. Sorry, I had a senior moment. And for those that don't know, we try to bring someone in from the existing committee because they kind of know the ins and outs and everything about the way it happens. Inspector members that we're bringing forward is Rhonda Riley to replace Scott Reagan. Their term will begin effectively. Randy Bauer and Stephen Cochran will serve a 6-year term beginning January 1st, 2024. And Inspector Alternate will be Michael Marlowe. And public members, Teresa Benavides and Yolanda Castro to serve 2-year terms beginning January 1st, 2024. And public members, alternate will be Edward Muth. I would entertain a motion to accept these recommendations.
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Woodruff, second by Commissioner Renee Harvey-Lowe. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any against? Any abstaining? Motion carries. We now, agenda item number 7, we're going to do an appointment for a committee to review applicants for the Broker Responsibility Advisory Group, formerly known as the Broker Responsibility Working Group, if that motion passes later in the meeting, which I think it will. I'm going to ask Commissioner Chance Brown, Commissioner Leslie Lerner, Commissioner Pena, along with myself, to sit on that selection committee. Agenda item number 8, appointment to review applicants for the Education Standards Advisory Committee. I'm asking Commissioner Barbara Russell, Commissioner Renee Harvey-Lowe, and Commissioner Jason Hartgraves to sit on that. And those will be starting up pretty quickly because I think those have to come back before us before the November meeting. Is that correct? That's right. Okay. All right. Going to agenda item number 9, staff and committee reports. Reports on Education Standards Advisory Committee. I believe it is going to be Jennifer Wheeler. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams, and I'm presenting the ESAC report for you today. ESAC met on July 10th at TREC headquarters with a Teams component for those that couldn't be in person. The committee heard one public comment relating to the requirement for both the education provider's operations manager and the student to sign enrollment agreements upon registration for qualifying courses. The committee voted to add this topic as an agenda item for consideration at the October ESAC meeting. The primary focus of this ESAC meeting was a consideration of revisions to the Principles 1 and 2 course content requirements. The committee is taking a holistic approach and revising these 2 courses within the context of all 6 of the pre-licensing courses, with a goal of eliminating redundancies and adding focus in areas that may need additional time or materials. Former member Chuck Jacobus appeared before the group to provide his recommendation for structuring the courses and why. After discussion, the committee decided to create a subcommittee to examine the outlines, including the organization of the subtopics for each section. The next meeting of the ESAC is October 2nd, 2023 at 10 a.m. The committee will address signature requirements for enrollment agreements and continue discussion relating to the content requirements for Principles 1 and 2. This concludes the ESAC report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Commissioner Lerner.
I think this was addressed before, but we just had a case come to us that a gentleman took his education, I think, ending in 2015. He got his license in 2022. He has gone on to defraud several people. But between that time, contracts have changed, rules have changed, whatever. What do we do to get them up to speed? Because he didn't take anything in between.
So I'm not sure, are you asking for him to come back and get a
No, I'm
license?
just saying, is it something we should look at, that if there is such a gap from the time you take your classes to the time you get your license, should they have to take contracts before getting that license, or take some sort of classes like we take CE all the time to get up to speed?
Sure. No, I appreciate that question. I think it is something that the ESAC committee has discussed in the past, and if that's something that Commissioner Lerner, you feel like they should address again, we can certainly add that to an agenda.
I would love that. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any
Okay.
other questions? All right, thank you. Next up will be General Counsel Vanessa Burgess talking about the Broker Responsibility Working Group.
Good morning, Vanessa Burgess, General Counsel for the record. The Broker Responsibility Working Group met in July. It's second to last meeting, hopefully, as the Broker Responsibility Working Group. This is soon to become the Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee. And along those lines, staff provided an update on the BRWG's most recent rule recommendations, just noting that the BRWG has been responsible for recommending the new rule 535.157, the obligation to respond timely, which was adopted at the last meeting. And then also the changes to 535.2 broker responsibility rule, and that was the increase on transactional oversight of brokerage activity for the first time from 1 to 3. So that was a broker responsibility working group recommendation. Additionally, highlighted some changes that came out of SB 1577 related to education experience requirements, and that being the next probably big project that group will tackle is looking at what that toggle is between education and experience now that that rulemaking authority, well, in January that rulemaking authority will be in place. After that, the group considered the topic of broker associates and did not reach any conclusions as of yet. That sounds like it is a bigger conversation because changes related to broker associates would be statutory in nature. This conversation is ongoing, and it will, so they're going to meet in October to discuss broker associates again, and then with the new makeup of the committee, which depending on what that looks like, see some new thoughts on that, and then bring forward some of the knowledge of this previous group.
A text about this. They said, weren't you working with the Broker Responsibility Working Group? Do you think they will push to require more direct supervisors? I guess what they're meaning is that it says to require in a certain amount of supervisors per a certain amount of agents. So these large 2,000 people firms that have so many agents without direct supervision, could you require a supervisor, I guess, for a certain amount of people? If you have 2,000, maybe for 50 people, you have to have a supervisor for each 50.
So that is something that was brought up at the very end of the
Right.
meeting as a possible future topic. That's something that would be before the commission to examine and make determinations as it relates to that. I think, traditionally I've not weighed in on business models, but supervision is an area where there's,
Right.
more conversations for you all.
Thanks.
And let me add to that, if that does come out of the Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee in the future, it's something we will certainly look at. I know in May we adopted the 3 transactions, so I think it's something this commission is very concerned about. And I think anything that comes out of one of the advisory groups or working groups, this commission will certainly, look at in depth to see if it's something that needs to be done.
Right, and that we had that conversation, I believe it was at the last workshop, about taking recommendations like that to workshop so that this group can really dig in on it.
Exactly. All right, any other questions? Okay, report by the Texas Real Estate Inspector Committee, Chair Lee Warren. And Lee, I want to thank you for taking the time to sit on the selection committee. It was invaluable. Thank you.
No, I certainly appreciate it. The Inspector Committee met on July 17th. The agenda was reasonably light in comparison to previous meetings that we've had. We're starting to see more public comments come in on agenda and non-agenda items, which I think is a good thing. I think this shows we are communicating better with stakeholders and they're wanting to get more involved. On your agenda today is the modification of the Consumer Protection Notice to remove the reference to the Inspector Recovery Fund, which has been eliminated by the state legislature. As with previous modifications to this form, the link that the vast majority of license holders use for this form on the website should stay the same, so the change should be pretty seamless from their standpoint. We saw the same thing happen in the last year or two, the last time it changed, and I don't recall any problems with it when that happened before. The elimination of the Inspector Recovery Fund will take some time to phase out, but I feel this is a good change as the fund has been underutilized since the requirement for inspectors to carry professional liability insurance went into place in 2007. As you just voted on, we have filled the vacant slot and the new inspector committee positions starting in 2024. We had an incredible number of applicants for those positions. Both inspector and public applications were higher than I've ever seen. We looked at a number of applications, ranked all those that we chose, and then we met. We realized then that further evaluation would be prudent in order to make determinations, so interviews were held. The process in itself was pretty new, but I feel we had a good feel for those that applied and made some great choices. I'm looking forward to working with those new appointees. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to be part of the process with the commissioners in the selection process for the inspector committee. I think having inspector input for those that are chosen to serve on that committee is essential, and I'm grateful that I was afforded the opportunity. I also want to thank TREC staff for their efforts in preparation for those meetings, which made the process go much smoother this time around than it did in previous endeavors. One of the items that came up in the public comment was a concern that inspectors are being drawn into paying brokerages for even the ability to walk into their offices or talk to agents, as well as to being put on their preferred vendor list. This has been commonly referred to as the pay-to-play rule. TREC has had a rule for some time that prohibits inspectors from paying to be on a list of preferred settlement service providers. A few years ago, that same rule was added to the brokerage salesperson side as well. Executive Director Buchholz put out an informational article with a video included regarding this rule change some time back. There's a lot of communication that went out to license holders when this change was happening. However, not much has really changed. There are still a number of brokerages charging excessive amounts to monies to settlement service providers such as inspectors, mortgage companies, title companies, home warranty, etc., to be a part of preferred vendor lists and other violations. I recently referred to this in the last Inspector Insight that was just published. One of the points I wanted to make was that TREC is a complaint-driven entity. If someone doesn't file a complaint, there isn't much that TREC can do about it. Many settlement service providers are afraid to file such complaints for fear that they will be blacklisted from brokerages. This poses an issue that the unethical behavior will be allowed to continue unless another solution presents itself or the service provider accepts the risk and files a complaint. These expensive programs limit consumer choice in settlement service providers. They also call into question the ability of brokers to require their agents to use said vendors, as that could be construed as a violation of the independent contractor agreement. I would like to see if there might be some ideas in the future for ways to remedy this situation. If you'd like to know more about this and how widespread this issue is, I would be happy to provide testimonials from a multitude of settlement service providers that would be willing to share their experiences and the amounts that are being charged for these programs. Our next Inspector Committee meeting is on October 16th at 10 a.m., and I would be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions? I want to thank you for your work. I want to thank you for the Inspector Committee looking into the future, what things might happen. So, Dane, we'll talk about it a little bit later on some gas piping that I really think started in your committee. Yeah, so thank you for your service. Next up will be General Counsel Vanessa Burgess on the Texas Real Estate Broker Lawyer Committee.
All right, good morning. Agenda item 12, this is the report from the Broker Lawyer Committee. And as a little bit of a reminder for those in the audience and new commissioners, this is the group that revises on a continual basis the TREC contract forms. I think of them as the forms you use to buy your house, right? It's not just that, but that I think is what members of the public probably think of. Oh yeah, I've seen those before. This is a group, it consists of 6 broker members and 6 attorney members who get together and they make revisions. They met in June to discuss possible changes in response to the 88th legislative session. So anytime the session ends, this group takes a look at any of the laws that, and we track them, that pass that may impact the TREC contract forms. You'll see before you today one of those. So HB 697, and the chair just mentioned this, updates the seller's disclosure notice required under 5.008 of the property code and adds language requiring a seller to disclose the type of gas fuel piping used in a home. So the Broker Lawyer Committee is recommending the commission adopt the changes to the commission seller disclosure notice, which you will see later on in this meeting, both on an emergency basis so that it can go into effect timely and then through the regular rulemaking process. The Broker Lawyer Committee is also looking at 2 other changes. You won't see recommendations before you today because those are not an emergency basis. Like the seller's disclosure, there's a timeline associated with that. One is notices by water districts. So House Bill 2816 replaces several different disclosure notices under Chapter 49, the Water Code, related to tax assessments made by water districts with a single notice. And so the bill provides the language required for the notice and requires water districts to post their own notice online if required by tax code to have a website. So the Broker Lawyer Committee is going to review and discuss a draft notice form at its next meeting that Abby has put together. So that will be on the agenda for October. There's also SB 785, which states that landowners own any underground geothermal energy and associated resources. And so because of this legislation, the Broker Lawyer Committee is going to consider the addition of the term geothermal to the list of examples on the natural resources lease section of contracts, and just of note, that's not one that will come with time. The only change right now is that seller's disclosure notice. This is just sort of on their ongoing discussion points. So you will see that seller's disclosure notice before you today, and if adopted on the emergency basis, it will become effective September 1.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much. Agenda item number 13, report on working group and broker services. Again, another working group that the commission put together, Commissioner Woodruff, Commissioner Lerner, Commissioner Pena, Marvin Jolly, former chairman of Texas Realtors, and Brian Bird's a large brokerage in our neighborhood, are all looking at different things involving broker services, including expansion teams, transaction coordinators, Uber agents, show me, WAMI agents, showing agents. And so we've had probably, I think, 4 meetings, hour and a half, 2 hours each one. We're meeting, I believe, next week for kind of a wrap up. So probably when we come in November, we will have some ideas, maybe a proposal. I think we went in with this, we went in more as a fact finding, not necessarily to come up with a solution unless there was a problem. I think all of us that sit on that committee have certainly learned a lot and probably learned more than we probably thought we would and had a totally different perspective than we went in with. And I think that's important on that. So that's the broker services. Next agenda item is executive committee report. These are in your materials, page 9 and page 11. Executive met twice. We're trying to meet monthly. We met June the 8th. Some of the things we talked about were some of the issues coming up with when you see 100 response to email being 100%. I know when you send an email into TREC, you had an auto reply saying that it's been handled, and I wanted to know if that included those. And the 100% is actually, addressing the problem and giving a solution for the problem, not just an automatic reply. Also talked about the legislative. We wanted more information on enforcement, which we will get into in the next executive meeting. And then the thing with the military license coming up as far as a spouse and a license for a military person. And then on June 11th we met. Again, we talked about some fingerprinting issues that might come up a little bit later, that might come up. I think It might be addressed a little bit later in Director Malloy's statement. Talking the legislative session, some of the emergency proposals that we thought we might have to address, and most of those did come up. We did a pretty in-depth thing, study and viewing and research on the enforcement. It was determined that needed to be brought to the full committee as far as a workshop, and we're going to workshop that in November. And again, I want to thank staff for putting together a lot of valuable information. Also talked about getting CE credit for attending the commission meeting. And then we decided that, or I decided that we would be better served moving the workshop from this commission meeting to November and do a deeper dive into the enforcement. We also brought up something for future executive that I think all of us that have a broker's license are going to be concerned with. When the broker in charge of a licensed entity like myself, I'm in charge of my broker entity license, when they pass away, is there a way for the next person to step up in succession, not be delayed by sending stuff into TREC? It's happened in our market twice where a very large brokerage, the broker passes away, and no matter how fast TREC can get things done, there is a gap where theoretically their licenses are inactive, their listings are inactive, everything is ceased. So I think we're going to maybe take a look at that and see if there's a way to have, maybe that cleaned up to where you can have a little better succession, because, sometimes it happens really quick. And so I think that's something that we're going to look at from the executive committee and maybe end up bringing to the commission. That concludes my report on executive meeting. Like I said, those notes are on page 9 and 11. I'll be glad to answer any questions on those. Okay, let's go to agenda item number 15, report by Budget Committee, Commissioner Woodruff.
Good morning. We've had a couple of meetings. The last one was on July 18th, where we gained a lot of insight from our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Williams, who will be actually covering it in detail, I think, in item number 37 here. But of particular note, we went through the staffing, adding 3 FTEs, 3.5% increase across the board of staff salaries, and various expenditures and IT projects, the specifics there. We also wanted to make sure that we stay competitive with staffing because, in the past we have been a little bit challenged with that. We want to be able to keep our good folks. And so we asked, several questions, and we got a lot of insight from Director Buchholz on, just what the state's policy is, administrative policy is, and some of the things that are going on there. And lastly, we discussed the budget and financial administration policies, investment policies. So we took a pretty deep dive into all of those areas and, felt like we have a pretty good game plan that's going to be presented here shortly. Thank you.
Any questions? All right, next, agenda item number 16, Enforcement Committee, Commissioner Hargraves.
Mr. Chairman, we met on June 27th briefly. We discussed an overview of the enforcement process and heard a motion for rehearing. That's it.
All right, thank you. And again, all that material is in your handout. Any questions for enforcement? Thank you very much. Next will be agenda item number 17, report with the TREC and the TLCB Joint Audit Committee, and Commissioner Pena will give that report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. We met on July 18th to look at 3 installments of our internal audit plan for FY 2023. Those reports are on agenda item number 37, page 171. We talked about governance, human resources, and the status of prior audit findings, and our internal auditor will make a presentation on that as well.
Any questions? All right, we're going to go from agenda item 17, we're going to go to agenda item number 39, and we will have the representative from McConnell Jones present the audit. Good morning, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Liz Myers with McConnell Jones. So So this morning, I'm going to present the summary of 2 audit reports and also of the follow-up of a past audit findings. The first audit is the Governance Control Environment Audit, and the purpose of the audit was to ensure the commissioners and the board members receive the training and communications they need from the executive team to make sure they can be successful in their roles. And our review of the TREC and TALC governance control environment showed that the executive director, the deputy director, as well as other members of the leadership team have generally effective controls in place to provide training and communications that the commissioners and board members need to be successful in their roles. Best practice processes were noted in the areas of commissioner and board compliance with respective regulations, as well as information provided to the commissioners and the board. No recommendations were made, and we rated this audit, or the governance control environment, as generally effective with best practice processes. The next audit is the human resources audit, and we gave this audit some improvement needed. We noted that some issues in our testing that occurred prior to the start of the new HR director with the commissioner back in August of 2022. We noted the new HR director has implemented many new processes and updated policies and procedures to make the department more effective and efficient, and she continues to identify opportunities for improvement within HR. So we did identify one internal control weakness regarding the onboarding process, and we recommend HR review the employee files for the onboarding records and documents to make sure they're completed, received, and maintained on file. With regards to prior audit findings, we found 2 open findings in the accounting and financial services audit. And in that, one of the findings was that the budget summary by the LBB Business Objects Report, or what we also know as CAPS, does not equal the USAS report. And we became aware that there are other known issues in CAPS reconciling to USAS, and therefore they are in process of trying to address those issues with CAPS by finding a, I'm sorry? Thank you. The configuration. Thanks, Renata, on doing this. It's not an easy process when it comes to CAPS. I've seen other issues have similar, other agencies have similar issues. And then the other one was written policies are not reflective of the actual processes, and that is being addressed currently. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have on these audits.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much. We will go back to agenda item number 18, beginning with director reports regarding agency operations, initiatives, and division updates. And we will start with Executive Director Chelsea Buckholz.
Good morning. That happened faster than I expected. Welcome back to Austin. We loved seeing most of you in Houston in May, but it feels really good to have the whole new group of 9 here in Austin today. So thanks for being here and for going to all of the trouble to do so. I want to add my gratitude for the outgoing broker-lawyer committee members, Charlie, who was here earlier, Charlie Still, Bo Blackburn, and Greg Glenn. Just the contributions of the volunteers for broker-lawyer and really for all of our advisory committees is unlike anything I have ever seen before coming to TREC. The industry and those around the industry are so involved, and it really adds to our work in a substantial way. We're lucky to have such an active group of volunteers, and so I thank Charlie and Bo and Greg for their service. The Broker Lawyer Committee is a sight to behold. They're long meetings, they're detailed, they get into arguments that are, it's almost like a sport, but I really appreciate the serious work that they do. I also need to add a strong welcome to all of those incoming. I won't mention all of them by name, but our general counsel often says to us, buckle up. And so I will tell the incoming volunteers, buckle up, there's work to do. I'll give a few updates, and then I'm going to pass the baton to our very capable directors to add some some detail. First, the RAMP project. This is not new for most of you, but this is our database replacement project that takes about 18 months to implement. We are in that implementation process right now. We hope that it will conclude next fall. Once implemented, we expect greater efficiency, and we also expect substantially more self-service options for our license holders on our website. So the short version, I get updates on how we're doing on this in great detail, and each division goes through a very detailed process, but I'm going to just give you the short version. We're on schedule, and staff are doing a great job. We have an extremely dedicated group of staff that really spans the entire four corners of the agency that are working hard to just put in their best effort to make this product as good as it can be. We're in the process right now of what we call tailoring, where each division, as well as a few representatives from other divisions who kind of are within that same who interact with each other, work with the vendor for like a week at a time. Their meetings will be from like 9 to noon and from 1 to 4, sometimes longer, to tailor the product to exactly what we need it to be. So this hard work, this detailed work, I think will make the end result a really good one, and one we'll be able to have for a long time. It's important work, and it often means that the juggle between that work and our daily work is pretty complicated, but our team's doing a great job. This is also a season of concluding one fiscal year and beginning another. Our fiscal year ends at the end of August, and I'm really proud of the work of our staff to end well and to work ahead to end well, and then to begin the next year strong. You'll hear a whole lot more about this work when Renata Williams presents the budget, but this has been a combined effort, but I'm thankful for our CFO for leading the charge on that. Additionally, it's also the season of implementing the legislative or the work of the legislative session. When last you met in May, the legislature had not concluded. They concluded on Memorial Day, the end of May, and have subsequently had 2 additional special sessions, but none of that was really related to the work of TREC. But during the regular legislative session, we tracked about 300 or more bills, and about 45 of those passed. We're in the process of implementing that. You'll see much of that work today in the form of rulemaking and then emergency rulemaking. Included in the passage was our TREC housekeeping bill, which just made a number of changes that we've looked for many sessions, and finally able to kind of clean up some of our statutes. Also, the repeal of the Inspector Recovery Fund and many others. There were 2 bills related to our work that were not initiated by TREC in any way, but that we watched closely and participated in. The Property Owner Association bill, that's Senate Bill 1668, and then Senate Bill 1712, which exempted certain limited partnerships and LLCs from licensure when they're purchasing property as a principal. Those 2 bills were vetoed. That was unrelated to, in my opinion, the substance of those bills, and more related to just swirling politics. But we watch those things closely. I want to praise our team. This is just a lot of praise from me today, but it's very our staff is very worthy of this. We've had a large team working to implement the legislative initiatives this summer. That will be ongoing through the fall, of course. It's hard work, and it comes at a time when we expect, you kind of expect the summer to be slow, a little bit more relaxed. It has not been because of all that we are implementing. I'm really proud of staff's efforts that you'll see today and beyond, and just want to acknowledge that what is coming before you today is the result of a lot of hard work of a team of many. I want to also warn you of a few things we're asking of you. First is for you to consider what you'd like the 2024 Commission initiatives to be. In years where we're not involved in the legislative session, we like to ask you how you'd like us to spend our time from a policy perspective. What would you like to see changed? What rules do we need to examine? Are there studies that we need to conduct? Work from the brokerage services working group. Is there something that comes out of that we might need to, peel back the onion on? Succession planning may be another one. Should we consider, eliminating paper applications and the writing of checks? That's on my list. I'll just lob out there for you to consider. But I want you to spend some time thinking about how you'd like us to spend our time. And between now and the next commission meeting, we'll send out a survey or a questionnaire to get those ideas from you. And then in the workshop in November, you can collectively, as a commission of 9, come up with your list of instructions for us, essentially. I think that's worked really well in the past, and it gives staff focus on, and keeps us from kind of doing just the one-offs that we hear from one of you on it. Lets us know that you, as a group, would like us to spend our time this way. One more assignment, and this is just for you to watch for. In the coming weeks, you will receive an email from our IT staff asking you to complete some security training, our favorite thing. We have to do this every year. Staff's in the process of doing it now. I did it last week. It took me 30 to 40 minutes. We will be sending that email to each of you because we are required to by law, and we would ask that you complete that before the November meeting. I'll pester you as much as you need, but I just wanted you to be on the lookout for that email. With that, I'll stop. But I'm happy to answer any questions on this or anything else that you have for me.
Any questions?
I do have a question.
Commissioner Brown.
Using your term, due to swirling politics, is there any reason to think that any of those 2 bills or the 75 others that were vetoed are coming back?
I have no idea. They weren't items that they were filed by others, and I would often bills do come back, and we're happy to participate in that process. Because I don't think there were substantive concerns, I think they will likely come back maybe in a little different form, but time will tell for sure. But we're happy to work with stakeholders on those issues. It just seemed like it had more to do with people involved, and sometimes arguments happen at the end of session. You just don't want to be in the middle.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Next up will be Director of Customer Relations Division, Robert Hood. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. For the record, Robert Hood, Director of Customer Relations Division. I'm pleased to present to you today on the status of the contact center. On page 21 in your meeting materials, it'll be the start of our June staff reports. On page 22, we'll start the Customer Relations Division stats through June 2023. All contact center metrics continue to stay below our predetermined targets. The contact center was presented with a little over 16,000 calls in June, and the hold time for June was 1 minute and 12 seconds. During this time, the contact center was staffed with 19 representatives that were handling phone calls as well as emails. We did have some outlier days in June where we were just a little bit over our hold time target. Out of the 22 working days in June, there were 2 days in which the contact center hold time was over 2 minutes. Despite these 2 days, the hold time for the month was still 1 minute and 12 seconds. The June comparison of calls between TREC and the board is consistent at 94% of our workload is TREC related. On page 23, this is our 13-month comparison of calls presented to the contact center and the hold times for those respective months. Over the past 13 months, the contact center has fluctuated from a low 31-second hold time in September of 2022 to a high 2 minutes and 2.5 minutes hold time in June of 2023. For this past July, last month, we met our target and we had a 1 minute and 38-second hold time. Going forward, I have 2 staff members that just completed training, and they will start taking phone calls and processing emails this week. So that'll give us 22 representatives handling phone calls and emails. Next on page 24, you will find the number of emails the contact center handled. In June, 3,251 emails were processed, and all within 1 business day of receiving them. Page 25, this is our fiscal year comparison of the monthly average number of calls that we were presented each fiscal year with the average hold time. 10 months of data is reflected in FY 2023, and we're averaging below 2 minutes at 1 minute and 21 second hold time. This will conclude all the reports for the Customer Relations Division. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Any questions? I mean, good. Okay, we will be adjourned at 10:46 a.m. I would like to correct something earlier. I said we would adjourn. That should have been recess. We are not adjourned. We still have some agenda items to take care of. Okay, we're going to come back into session at 10:56. I did have a question. I almost forgot it. I see the number of emails, they still fluctuate up and down. The number of calls are and hold times going down. Are they finding more stuff on the website? Are the phone calls directing them to the website? The phone calls are down, emails are up and down. I'm just wondering why email is so inconsistent.
I'm not sure if one correlates with the other, but I do see that a lot of our emails are asking for more detailed information about their license, and so we're having to respond a little bit more detail to our emails.
Okay, all right. Any other question? Good job on the hold time. All right.
Thank you.
Next up will be Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education Examination Services. And her report is on page 26, beginning page 26.
Yes, hello again, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education and Exams for the record. The education team has been hard at work. Initial training for our newer team members is complete, and together the team has been able to keep on top of increasing volume of applications. I'm really proud of each and every one of them and grateful for their commitment. As Chelsea mentioned, we're looking forward to beginning our tailoring sessions with the new database management vendor, Acela, in the coming weeks. So we'll start that, I believe, beginning next week, the education team. Moving on to reports. The education reports begin on page 26 of your materials. The first report is the fiscal year-to-date information regarding qualifying providers and courses broken down by month. Similarly, the next page reflects the same information as it relates to continuing education. The third page of the report, or page 28 of your materials, is a 13-month comparison of all applications approved, broken down by application type, with a graphical representation below the chart. You'll notice the spike in March. As a reminder, we were experiencing a backlog in applications and dedicated additional staff and time that month to help us push forward. I'm happy to report that we are back within established goal processing times. The report on page 29 of your materials represents a 5-year look back at applications approved, along with the 2023 fiscal year to date total. This report is a good indicator that our volume of applications is steadily increasing. The next page of the report is a year-over-year comparison of all applications approved going back to FY 2018. You will see that the incomplete FY 2023 has already surpassed any of the previous fiscal years with 2 months remaining. Lastly is a 13-month comparison representing the volume of phone calls and emails handled by the Education Division. This is a newer ad that I thought you might be interested in seeing. And that concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up will be Director of Enforcement, Michael Malloy. Oh,
I thought I was more than welcome to go. Good morning, Chair Kastner, Commissioners. Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement. I'm going to refer you to my first report, which is page 37 of the materials. And if you compare year-to-date with the same time in 2022, broker and sales cases actually are up 10%. This you'll notice specifically under application investigations, there was a significant spike in June. We had some issues with our extended background fingerprint program that basically put us down for about 2 weeks. So that represents the uptick in June. Luckily, the team that handles a lot of that is well seasoned, and we're pretty much caught up and back to normal. So I expect those numbers will go down to regular type of numbers. And just remind you, the application investigations are the people that submit their initial application, that go through the full fingerprint check, versus the fitness determinations is someone that hasn't filed an application yet to become a license holder, and they give us their information for fitness determination. We give them a preview based upon their background, what they would do, where the initial one is people that file it. Maybe people are doing upgrades, or individuals that get involved with criminal offenses while they are licensed. So,
Mike, with respect to the fingerprinting, what type of, are you getting hits on people that have not reported criminal activity, like a DWI, or can you give us a flavor for the new fingerprinting discovery of offenses that are out there?
we always get people that have hits that never disclose. Some of the PFDs today are representative of that, because people that fail to disclose within 30 days, it's a fairly common violation where people don't do that. We've tried our best to educate people on that, and we're going to put even more information in the next legal and ethics course that's coming out in January. So hopefully that'll stem that a little bit much, but it's a common thing where I think where it really stems from is people will get on like deferred adjudication or something like that, and a criminal attorney may not be familiar with what the licensing guidelines are for, or may not even fully understand what it is, and tell them you're good, this isn't a conviction because it's on the deferred basis, but you still need to disclose it on regardless if it's on deferred adjudication or not. So I think there is a slight bit of confusion in that. When I used to work in the criminal law world, there was lots of criminal attorneys that didn't bother with that type of educating themselves, but I think that's still a proliferated problem. So
I think that from a fingerprinting standpoint, until you go through a full process, I think the expectation is that you're going to get more enforcement cases as a result of the fingerprinting process.
Yeah, well, we do run the wrap back system, so we do get hits while people are in the middle of license. So it's not always run when they just renew, but we could run them again additionally when they renew their license every 2 years as well. So,
Commissioner Lerner.
When people renew, I've noticed there's a lag between they get their license renewed and then the wrap back system is run. Is there any way to do that upon or prior to them being renewed?
Traditionally, we've always just allowed the people to renew, and then with their fingerprints would be run at that time. The wrap back system only became initialized recently in the past year and a half or so. We can get closer to that timeline. It's just we have some issues with our fingerprint system that do pop up, and it's not necessarily always with ours. It's dealing with policy changes with the FBI and DPS where they sometimes may not inform us.
Right.
But we try to get those open fairly frequently after we get the hits. There is a gap, I agree. It's just not to hold up people that don't get in trouble. That's where that's always
So I have
resided.
no clue how it's run, but I just didn't know if there was a way to run it simultaneously through the system as it's processing.
Well, we get the hits and we run them. A lot of times if we get hits that month, it sometimes takes FBI and DPS multiple days to report back to us. So that's where always that lag as well.
And isn't it partly, is this on, can you hear me?
I think so. I can hear you.
It says it's on my part. It's the life of a case, right? It's one thing to get a hit, but then that potentially opens a case that then you have to, then there's an evolution to that. And so to hold someone's license up for essentially an accusation rather than a final decision there's a hiccup in that.
It's more because, I mean, most of the individuals don't have criminal problems. Either way, we have to run them, and holding up those individuals would be, especially if you're renewing like the day before you're expired. But we have sufficient staff for the majority of the ones we get hits, they're open the next following month or within the next week or two. And first, when we ask for questions, they have 14 days to respond. So there's lags in there. And then when you see things that have to go to a SOA hearing, I just recently was talking with someone that recently went to a CLE. So they docket it like over 40,000 cases per year. So right now, when we're docketing stuff, it's like November they're giving dates. So there's all those time considerations to take into. But we have internal standards where when an attorney gets the case from our other standard staff, they're supposed to act on it within the next 15 days. So
The issue is large enough to be concerned with. Is there any way to put the license on hold or do something between now and November or that time frame that there's questions? Because that person could still be out there doing something really bad and have an active license.
there's a method for temporary suspensions, but you need, in the law, it says that in order to, give the person the right to that hearing, the hearing needs to be set and it needs to be really soon. I don't know the exact language, but a 3-month reprieve may not be acceptable under the statute. It would be something we would have to discuss.
But by and large, most of those cases are required to be reported within 30 days of whatever triggers the event, right? And
Mostly when they plead guilty or...
So we're talking about exceptions to the exception here, in which an administrative delay in approving somebody's renewal, and then a hit comes in 2 weeks later or a month later. That would be an exception, right? And at which point you take whatever enforcement action is necessary. So at the end of the day, it's an exception to an exception, right? In a case if somebody didn't report something as they were supposed to.
The RAP Act will get them, and then we proceed for the most part.
Well,
General Counsel.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay. Doesn't sound on. And I think to Chelsea's point and to Mike's point, a temporary suspension's got to meet certain standards. And to Chelsea's point, it's that whole process of, so you couldn't just say, oh, we got this hit, we're pulling the license, no renewal. You're going to let them continue through that process to the renewal, and then you're going to take them through the enforcement process the way you would anyone else, and maybe there's other things that come up, et cetera, and so you're going to have those cases. So yes, it doesn't match up perfectly, but that's what enforcement would need in order to pursue that case and take it through all of the steps, right? It's an administrative
process
yeah,
type of thing we talk about quite a bit.
But there is, he's right, there's a temporary suspension provision, but it's got to be, that's a high threshold, right?
It's very narrowly defined in the statute, if I recall.
All right, any other questions?
I can proceed. So, Overall, the divisions closed 6% more cases than we did last year. And as you noticed, we closed a near record high of 620 cases last month. And overall, which is really good in my opinion, we've reduced the overall case inventory by 30% since last year this time. Transitioning to the case aging report on page 38. Overall, the report reflects 98% of the cases are less than a year old, with cases that are less than 6 months old at 91%, and there's 1% of cases that are the 12 to 24 month range. You're going to notice on the report there's 2 cases that are 18 to 24 months range. One of those cases are going to be heard today. It's one of the PFDs, and the other one was settled by an agreed order last month. The remainder of the 12 and 18 month ones, we're striving to pretty much, they're all either set for hearing, waiting for a PFD from the judge, or we're in the final settlements with them via an agreed order. Comparing the aging from June of last year, the 0 to 6 month range has improved by 14%, and the over 6 month range has decreased by 13%. Turning to page 39 and 40, the subject matter categories report. There's no notable changes. The top 3 categories are being sales, other, licensure issues, which deals with background history, and breach of fiduciary duties category. And before I conclude my reports, as you reminded, we launched the advertising compliance program in April, and this was part of a commission initiative that's allowed us to triage advertising related complaints. So far we've opened 10 of those types of complaints and moved them through the compliance program. 6 of those have complied and we've dismissed them as part of the compliance. 2 failed to comply, and the remainder are still pending either compliance or not. This concludes my reports at this time. Any questions?
Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Backtracking, we'll go Denise Sample, Director of Licensing. Then
Good morning, Chair Kestner and Commissioners. For the record, I'm Denise Sample, Director of Licensing, and I appreciate you keeping us on our toes. We're so used to our order, so thanks for that. If you turn to page 32 of your materials, that's the start of the licensing reports. This is data through June of 2023. And the first report is applications received. So the year-over-year comparisons in the top left, and you'll see them broken down by license type. One thing to note is for broker and sales agent applications received, we're seeing just under a 14% dip in real estate applications compared to the same time period last fiscal year. This has been steady throughout this fiscal year, and we'll continue to monitor it. For the overall numbers, we are 27% down from this time last fiscal year, and that's with 2 months left to report on. So if the numbers hold steady, we expect that we might end the year with about 12% fewer applications, but at the November meeting, we'll have the full fiscal year data to report. The next page includes renewal activity. So that's also broken down by license type, and we are noticing that the renewal rates are holding steady. So you see an increase in the number of actual renewal applications processed, but because we have a larger license holder population, those numbers have been growing, the renewal rate is holding steady, and that is helpful in projecting our future revenues. So we continue to monitor that number as well. The next report is the total license holder counts. These are broken down by license type, and active and inactive, or excuse me, active license holders are carved out there. And I believe Chair Kestner, you commented that we are at just under 237,000 license holders at the end of June, and that does include active and inactive. The next page breaks down those license holder counts by license type. And the last report is the license application processing time. As a reminder, this is the amount of time on average that it takes the licensing staff to respond to applications and additional documents that are submitted by an applicant. And our benchmark for that is 14 days. And as you see, the numbers for June all the way on the right, we are well under that threshold for the month of June. And if there are no other questions, that concludes my
Any
report.
questions? I just want to note, especially for the providers that are here and listening online, June was 3.71 days to process an application for a salesperson's license. So it's amazing. That's just, I mean, you turn it in Tuesday, you're getting it Friday. So good job on that. And even the broker individuals under 10 days. So good job on those.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you. Next up is Tom Watson, Director of IT.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Tom Watson, Director of Information Technology. If you turn to page 41, 41 will show you basically the utilization of online application submission. So the first part shows pretty good participation for initial applications. The second part is focusing on the renewals and shows very strong utilization for using the renewal service on the website. And we're looking at 98% or so of those applications utilize that service. On the next page, shows more of a trending, and you can see both for initial applications and the renewal applications, they seem to be consistent over the last 13 months. So we are seeing continued stability and participation in those online services. Any questions?
Any questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up will be Renata Williams, Chief Financial Officer.
I can get this thing how I want it. All right. Good morning. Good morning, Chair Kestner, Commissioners. I'm Renata Williams, Chief Financial Officer. I'll be presenting the staff reports for the Financial Services Division for the reporting period ending June 30th, 2023. Starting on page 43, you will find our June budget status report on revenue, which is included in the staff reports that are on our website. This report shows that we've collected $12 million, with $2.3 remaining to be collected with the remaining for the remaining FY. 91% of our revenue is derived from our licensing fees. And as Denise kind of stated a moment ago, Director Sample, stated a moment ago, we are seeing a decrease in certain categories, and that does affect our revenue as well. But I'd also like to kind of piggyback that with our projections that we did last year coming into this year, we kind of already were projecting a decrease. And so we average about $1.2 million per month in revenue, and we're anticipating to hit our target for the FY. So I'm not worried about us meeting our goal. On page 44, you will find that the June budget status report on expenses. This report shows that we've spent $13.1 million on operational expenses, with $7.3 million remaining to be expended this fiscal year. On page 45 is the operating activity comparison for 23. So in April, our expenses were slightly higher than our revenue. They were $1.2 million, and our revenue was 1.1, which is a difference of $102,000. In May, our revenue and expenditures were both at $1.3 million. In June, our revenue was slightly lower again at $1.2 million, and our expenditures were at $1.3, and it was a difference of roughly $51,863 during that particular time. As mentioned, we do average about $1.2 million per month. We've collected $12 million, and so we're going to be on target to hit our projected revenue goal for FY23. On page 46, this is just a snapshot of the project budget for RAMP, which is our Regulatory Applications and Modernization Project. Project costs began in FY21 as we work to develop the scope for the project and identify our needs for the new system. We awarded the multi-year contract this year, and I anticipate closing out the contract in FY28. The total project budget is $6.2 million over the course of 7 years, and through June 30th, 2023, we've expended $566,500 towards this project. Okay, moving on to page 47. We have our investment holdings report for the reporting period ending June 2023. These reports are in accordance with Chapter 2256 of the Texas Public Funds Investment Act, Section 2256.023. Here we have the TREC operating account 3055. We had one U.S. Treasury bill that matured on June 15th. The funds were reinvested in another Treasury bill purchased at a discount on June 15th. The ending market value of these investments was $16.4 million. The total account balance, which includes the Treasury bills, cash and state Treasury, and our repurchase agreements, was approximately $21.2 million, and we had $9.7 million set aside for operational reserves. This leaves us with an ending balance of $11.4 million available for operations. On page 48, this is the Real Estate Recovery Fund, account 3058. We had one U.S. Treasury bill that matured on June 15th. Again, funds were reinvested and another Treasury bill was purchased. The ending market value for these investments was $3.1 million. The total account balance, which included the Treasury bill, the cash and state Treasury, plus the repurchase agreements, was a total of $3.7 million. We had $527,015.46 reserved for potential payments within the next 90 days, which leaves $3.1 as the remaining balance. This fund is fully capable of meeting all known obligations. Lastly, on page 49, we have the report for the Real Estate Inspection Recovery Fund, account 3059. This account only has one U.S. Treasury bill that matures in December on the 15th, 2023. It has an ending market value of $577,000. The total account balance is $619,000, and there are no pending payments from this fund. This concludes the Financial Services Division report. Are there any questions?
Any questions? I've got one kind of follow-up on what was mentioned earlier. On page 44, there's a line item 2009 DPS. That is for the fingerprinting. Is that correct, or am I?
That is correct. For the
Okay.
background checks, the fingerprintings, yes, sir.
Very good. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up, Summer Mandel, Government and Strategic Communications. Welcome back.
Thank you. Hello, it's great to be back. As Commissioner or Chair Kesner said, I'm Summer Mandel, Government and Strategic Communications Director, and I'm happy to be back. Missed y'all during the May meeting. And for those of you who are new, welcome. And since my title is a lot of different things, I just wanted to give you a quick insight into what that means. So I do communications for the Commission, but also the Texas Appraiser Licensing and Certification Board, social media, newsletters, things you see up here, articles and such. But also the government part is assisting the Deputy Executive Director, Tony Slagle, with legislative implementation and communicating with legislative offices and things like that. So a lot of different things. So I'd also like to recognize our communications specialist who presented in May, Sierra Pizarro. She has been doing a fantastic job, and one of the things that she's done is this new videos, reels, and stories. Our followers are taking note of that. So for example, the video reel on Facebook about the two proposed changes from the May meeting, that's the one that has the TREC logo and it says proposed changes on it. That's great. Had a reach of about 1,400 users, which is pretty good. This is something we'll keep developing, and I'm just so thrilled to have her on the team. We're going to be able to do so much more than we have been. You'll also see in the report open rates and click-through rates for some of our newsletters, and Inspector Insight is great. So we have about 13,000 recipients for that email. I sent one last week and we're up to about 16,000. So that's good news. I think people are finding how to sign up and receive those messages. 63% of those who received it opened. And then the click-through rate, that's how many people clicked on a link through the newsletter. So 8% is pretty strong. And just for reference, the stats we've been throwing out for government agencies, similar types, an open rate of 20% is pretty good. A click-through rate of 2 to 3% is average. Let's see. In the report, you'll also see some data for the top performing social media posts from the last quarter. This is about how sales agents will have to take the real estate brokerage course as part of their 90 hours of sales apprentice education. That's effective October 1st, as y'all know. So for your reference here, post impressions are the number of times the post was on screen, which may include multiple views by the same people. Reach is the number of people who who saw the post at least once. And engagement is the number of times people interacted with the post. They liked it, they shared it, they commented, they clicked, etc. So we don't pay to boost posts or advertise our posts. All of this is organic reach, which means people who follow us come upon it, or it's shared by our followers or others and shared in groups. So since I pulled the data for this on July 20th, the impressions and reach for that post have just continued to increase, and it's about 12,500 in reach. And for just benchmarking, our typical post reach is from about 600 to 2,000. So 12,500 is great. We're at more than 13,000 impressions, and the post engagement is at 2,045. So as it stays up, I think it'll keep getting clicks and such. On another social media note, we are no longer posting to the TREC Twitter account, or actually it's called X now. The account still exists. We have the handle. I'm still monitoring because people occasionally tag us or ask questions. This just means we're not actively posting. It has not historically been a very strong engagement place for us. Our platforms where our audiences are Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram in that order. And just for other reference points, so on X, we have 1,673 followers versus Facebook, where we have nearly 36,000 followers. LinkedIn, we've got 6,750 followers, and those keep going up. As Sierra mentioned in her May update, we've had ongoing opportunities to collaborate with stakeholders in the industry, including the Texas Land Title Association and, of course, Texas Realtors. They've printed some articles written by us, and we continue to collaborate to get the word out there. But there's another important way that we share information that may not be as obvious to folks, and that is through public speaking events. Of course, there are larger events like Winter Meeting, but there are also a lot of smaller local board events that our staffers go to. So a few weeks ago, General Counsel Burgess traveled to San Antonio and gave the San Antonio Board of Realtors an update, including some of the stuff that y'all are going to be discussing here today. And then that same week, Deputy Executive Director Slagle and I met with Texas Realtors Leadership Program members from Amarillo and Lubbock. They were in town, and so we had a great conversation around TREC's role in the real estate industry, like enforcement, complaints, how that all works, some good questions, and then shared some of the outcomes from the legislative session, since that's something Tony, or Deputy Executive Director Slagle, and I work on a lot. And so these events, I am behind the scenes in a lot of them, with the exception of that last one, but just helping prep staff, making sure they're up to date on all the things that have been going on, some of the stuff we've been communicating, making sure they know about events or other updates that we're trying to make sure local boards know about, and local realtor associations. So I think that the Lubbock Realtors had a good time because Executive Director Buckholtz has been invited to travel to Lubbock and speak at a lunch and learn to more of their members. So we'll continue nurturing those relationships, and I just look forward to more opportunities to get in front of folks in that way. So that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions y'all might have.
Any questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move to agenda item number 19, public comments. We have one public comment request. Lisa Williams, if you would, I'm going to limit comments to 3 minutes, and welcome.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Williams. I am a student at Lone Star College Montgomery. I am done with my real estate classes. My licensing broker will be Kenda Flagg with Simplicity Realty. I am up here today to speak on the May 16th agenda, item number 17, public comments. A nice individual spoke about corporatizing agents and taking away 1099s, and I just wanted to bring that into attention so that way TREC can remain competitive. And I'm done.
Very good, thank you very much. Okay, we will go into agenda item number 20, contested cases, and I'm going to give a little background. Step 1, I will announce the case. Step 2, I will ask anyone here to speak on behalf of the respondent. We will outline the process, reasonable times. Each party will be given 5 minutes. I need to remind everybody, including the commissioners, any testimony and/or questions needs to be related and limited to the record that is in your information. And I will start with agenda item number 20A. In consideration and possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket number 329230643, 423 REC TREC versus Travis Brown. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of Travis Brown? Okay, I will ask Mr. Malloy, Director of Enforcement, to come and present.
Good morning again. Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement. So the first case up here for consideration and possible action is a revocation case. The commission had a burden of proof in this case, and it primarily dealt with the criminal history of the respondent who pled guilty on March 1st of 2021 to 3 felony counts of possession with a controlled substance with intent to deliver. Respondent was placed on 10 years deferred adjudication. Additionally, the respondent failed to notify us within 30 days of the plea of guilty. The judge felt that we met our burden of proof and recommended revocation and administrative penalty of $1,250. So staff recommends adoption of the PFD with those recommendations from the judge. I stand by for any questions, or the attorney that handled the matter is also here for more detailed questions.
Are there any questions at this time? Any questions? Okay. Hearing none, we will move to agenda item 20B. Consideration and possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket number 32923081996, REC TREC versus Hayden Scott Catt. Is there anyone here to speak on behalf of the respondent? Seeing none, I will ask Director Malloy to begin.
Thank you. This is the denial of a sales agent application. In these situations, the sales agent has the burden of proof to meet the statutory honesty, trustworthiness, and integrity standard. And the reason for this denial was Mr. Catt committed the first-degree felony offense of aggravated robbery. And while the offense occurred in 2012, he had just been recently released from parole. He actually filed his application while still on parole. The judge, he additionally failed to disclose the DWI offense as part of his application. The majority of this focused on that aggravated robbery offense. Judge reviewed all the Chapter 53 factors, determined that he was not yet fit for licensure, And this is his track record since parole was too short and denial was appropriate at that time. So staff recommends adoption of the PFD and the recommendation to deny Mr. Katz's application for sales agent license.
Any questions? Okay, we'll go to agenda item number 20C. In consideration of possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket number 329-231-11880, REC TREC versus Aaron Lee Alvarado. Is there anybody here to speak on behalf of the respondent? Please begin.
So this is another revocation case, and we had the burden of proof. The primary dealt with the respondent. He pled no contendory in 2021 to the secondary offense of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. Respondent was placed on 10 years of deferred adjudication, and he failed to notify us within 30 days as required by the statute. Mostly where they looked at the facts of this, the respondent, he pointed a rifle at a girlfriend. He was 36 at the time. It's not necessarily one of those youthful, discretionary types of situations. So the judge felt appropriate, since we met our burden of proof for those two violations, to revoke the license and assess a $1,500 administrative penalty. The staff recommends adoption of the PFD with the recommendations that I just mentioned.
Any questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
We will go to agenda item 21, and I have big red print. Read the language below exactly before adjourning. Executive session to discuss pending litigation or obtain legal advice of counsel on agenda items pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.071. We are adjourning at 11:36 a.m. I figure we'll be out probably 1 hour. Probably be back, let's say, 12:45 a.m. Okay, we will go ahead and go back into session at 12:45 p.m. We will return to agenda item number 20. We'll start with agenda item number 20A. Consideration of possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket number 329-2306432, REC TREC versus Travis Brown. I'll again ask, is anybody here to speak on behalf of Travis Brown? Hearing none, Deputy Director Malloy, would you, anything you'd like to add? Any questions for Director Malloy concerning the Brown PFD? Any questions?
Director Malloy, any insight on why you thought the judge lowered the fee from $250?
Outside of the reasoning that the judge put in there, none really. I mean, it was within that penalty matrix ran, and they said they split the difference. So I don't. A lot of times when judges, they feel if they're going to do the ultimate thing of revoking the person, the last thing they're going to do is additionally penalize a person. So sometimes we've even seen it where they've negated the administrative penalty altogether. Or lowered it in a lot of cases. So that could have been part of the reasoning of the judge as well.
Any other questions? Hearing no questions, I would entertain a motion on agenda item 19A.
I move to adopt the PFD as written, Mr. Chairman.
I have a motion from Commissioner Pena, second Commissioner Lowe. Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any against? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Going to agenda item number 20B, consideration of possible action regarding proposal for decision in the matter of SOA docket 329-2308196, REC TREC versus Hayden Scott Cat. Is there anybody who will speak on behalf? Hearing none. Any questions for Director Malloy? Hearing none, would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the PFD as written.
Motion made by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Russell. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any against? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Moving to agenda item 20C, consideration possible action regarding proposal for decision matter of SOA docket 329231180 REC TREC versus Aaron Lee Alvarado. Anybody here to speak for Mr. Alvarado? Any questions for Director Malloy? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt the PFD as written.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner.
Second.
Second by Commissioner Pena. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. We will now move to agenda item number 21. Recovery Fund Deputy General Counsel Abby Lee will present.
Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners. Abby Lee, for the record, Deputy General Counsel. Agenda item 22A is discussion and possible action to authorize settlement of recovery fund claims or take other action on TREC number RF23002, James Allen Augsburger versus David M. Kearney, North Star Realty Group LLC, David Kearney Broker Empire Realty. You received a full summary under separate cover, but just a few highlights of this case or this claim. It involves a real estate broker who purchased 3 properties, 2 of which were via owner financing. And in this agreement, the broker agreed he would not sell or lease the properties until payment was made in full and that he would file liens on the properties. He ultimately did not honor that agreement. Therefore, the staff recommendation is to authorize a settlement payment of $100,000, the maximum allowed under the law.
Any questions? Would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to authorize payment in $100,000.
Have a motion? Second. Got a motion by Commissioner Pena, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries.
Agenda item 22B is discussion and possible action to authorize settlement of recovery fund claims or take other action on TREC number RF23004, Steve Von Hoff versus James W. Maddox. This claim involves a real estate broker who signed an LOI on behalf of a seller for 79 lots. He then received and failed to refund the $25,000 fee to the buyer. The staff recommendation is to authorize a settlement payment of $33,989.19 plus 5.5% interest calculated on the amounts awarded in the judgment.
Any questions? Hearing none, would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve payment of the $33,989 various cents plus the interest to this case.
Motion made by Commissioner Woodruff. Second, Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 23.
Agenda item 23 is the report regarding denial of recovery fund claim RF23003, Lisa Botic versus Aaron McDaniel, Mary McDaniel, and Matthew Kenny. This is just a report. This claim was denied because soliciting a loan and preparing a promissory note is not conduct requiring a real estate license. You received a copy of the denial letter in your materials under separate cover, and again, it does not require any action, but I'm here to answer any questions.
Any questions on the denial? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion. I'm sorry, not required. Thank you. All right, you're going to be here for agenda item 24, correct?
I am. So we are switching now to our emergency rulemaking. So just as a brief roadmap, you will see all the rules that are up for emergency adoption later on in the agenda under the proposed rulemaking, the typical thing that you see on your agendas. And we do this concurrent rulemaking anytime there is an emergency adoption, because when you do an emergency adoption, it's temporary. And so if you want that rule to continue, you've got to also do that concurrent regular rulemaking as well. So some of these will be duplicative. Agenda item 24 is discussion and possible action to adopt emergency amendments to 22 TAC 531.18 consumer information. You heard a little bit about this earlier, but the amendments are adopted on an emergency basis to implement statutory changes enacted by the 88th Legislature in House Bill 1363, which becomes effective September 1st. And this is the bill that eliminated the Real Estate Inspection Recovery Fund. As a result, references to that fund are removed from the Consumer Protection Notice that's adopted by reference, and the version number in the rule is updated as well. Just a couple notes for you. On this item, the materials originally contained a version that left off some text. So what you have before you and the website has been updated with the correct form. And as we've done previously, you also heard this a little bit earlier, when we update the form, we'll use the same link so that if a license holder's website is in compliance now, it will continue to remain in compliance come September 1st. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption on an emergency basis amendments to 22 TAC 531.18 and the form adopted by reference as presented to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption with an effective date of September 1st.
Motion to approve staff's recommendation, Mr.
Motion made by Commissioner Pena, second Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 25.
Agenda item 25 is discussion and possible action to adopt emergency amendments to 22 TAC 535.58, license for military service members, veterans, or military spouses. The amendments are adopted on an emergency basis in part to implement statutory changes enacted by the 88th Legislature in Senate Bill 422, which again becomes effective September 1st. It modifies the time period within which issuance of a license after certain conditions are satisfied from as soon as practicable to no later than 30 days. And so the amendments reflect this statutory change. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption on an emergency basis amendments to 22 TAC 535.58 as presented to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption with an effective date of September 1.
Entertain a motion. Motion made by Commissioner Russell, second Commissioner Pena.
I do, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I do have a quick question.
Question.
I believe on this it said that after 3 years have passed, they've had to get their license, or however that wording is. Is our database able to accommodate those notifications?
I believe so, but I'm going to look at Denise Sample just to verify. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Okay, good. I just know it has had some limitations lately, so I just wanted to make sure.
If it helps, these are handled manually, and so everything's updated manually because there's so few applicants that come in this way, and then even fewer who meet the specific criteria set out. But yes, we can handle those manually and track them and not auto-renew. Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 26.
Agenda item 26 is discussion and possible action to adopt emergency amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 535, Subchapter R as follows: 535.210 fees and 535.219 schedule of administrative penalties. The amendments are adopted on an emergency basis to implement statutory changes enacted by the 88th Legislature in House Bill 1363, again becoming effective September 1, which again eliminates the Real Estate Inspection Recovery Fund. The changes to 210 reflect the fact that for applications submitted as of September 1, the $10 fee will no longer be required. The changes to 219 replace a repealed statutory section with a related rule, which is 535.220G. Although it's related, this rule is authorized by another statutory section. So the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption on an emergency basis amendments to 22 TAC Subchapter R as presented to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption with an effective date of September 1st.
Motion to approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Pena. Second. Second Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 27.
Agenda item 27 is the last of our emergency adoptions, is discussion and possible action to adopt emergency amendments to 22 TAC 537.62 Standard Contract Form TREC number OP-H Seller's Disclosure Notice. The Seller's Disclosure Notice is updated to comply with requirements of House Bill 697, which becomes effective September 1st, 2023, and adds a disclosure related to fuel gas piping to the statutorily required notice. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit for adoption on an emergency basis amendments to 22 TAC 537.62 and the form adopted by reference as presented to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption with an effective date of September 1, 2023.
Entertain a motion.
Yeah, motion to move that.
Motion made by Commissioner Woodruff, second. Commissioner Lowe. Any discussion?
Yes, I've received two questions on this. One was saying, why is TREC and Texas Realtors version different?
I can't speak to the Texas Realtors version. Our version models the property code provision 5.008, and we don't deviate from that. That's the Broker Lawyer Committee's policy. I'm not sure what the Texas Realtors version looks like, but they do go above and beyond the statute.
Okay, perfect. And the second one is, are they saying the seller must state what kind of piping is used for natural gas, or does the property have fuel gas? The disclosure and Texas Realtors email say different things.
I think the language is, and I don't have it in front of me, but it's in the section that asks if seller is aware of any of this existing on the property. So the question would be whether the seller knows, and they may not know, even though it might be there, but the question is whether they are aware that it exists on the property.
Thank you.
And the disclosure says fuel.
Oh, great. Gotcha.
Fuel gas piping. Yes. Any other questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. I think we're going to talk about these again in about 10 minutes, right?
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Next up, agenda item 28, discussion on possible adoption of amendments 22 TAC, and that's Vanessa Burgess, General Counsel.
Okay, good afternoon. So agenda item number 28 is discussion and possible action to adopt amendments to 535.92, which are the continuing education requirements. So as a reminder, these changes were proposed, put in the register, comments received, which I'll address, and now if the commission votes today, they would become adopted. Those changes would become part of the rule. So the amendments to 535.92 expand a real estate license holder's opportunity to earn up to 4 hours of continuing education elective credit for attendance at a single commission meeting, and clarify that such credit may only be awarded for attendance at one commission meeting per renewal cycle. The remainder of the changes are either updates to terminology for consistency throughout the chapter. So 13 comments were received, and they were considered by the executive committee. I'll highlight just a couple of those, but those comments are in your materials. So one comment asked for clarification regarding credit for meetings attended remotely, which the executive committee, and I will note the rule language specifically prohibits, that is in-person attendance. One commenter requested clarification regarding the number of hours that can be earned, which the committee also noted is detailed in the rule language itself. It's that up to 4 hours, one meeting per renewal cycle. You cannot attend 2 meetings and get half and half. It's one meeting in person per renewal cycle, up to 4 hours. So if for some reason the meeting is only 1 hour long, which has not happened in my time here, then you would get the 1 hour, right? So there's a whole process for this. It's no different than what you see at the February meeting, except that it is now available at all meetings, and to the extent the meetings that are in different locations continue, there's an opportunity there that would, for example, you mentioned, Chair, at the Houston meeting, the, sort of standing room only, had that been in place, that would have been probably really exciting for some of them. We've also received comment from someone who misunderstood that the rule change does not increase the number of continuing education hours a license holder must take, so there's not been an increase in hours. Some commenters expressed concern about continuing education should be classroom-based only. And then other commenters thought the change to allow license holders more opportunity to obtain continuing education credit was very beneficial because commission meetings are informative, which is also the position the executive committee took, which is that attending a commission meeting is a really valuable opportunity for license holders to see how their regulatory body works, especially as it relates to contested cases. So the executive committee considered all the comments. They've declined to recommend any changes to the rule as published. So the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit for adoption the amendments to 22 TAC 535.92 as published to the register with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
I move that the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner. Second, Commissioner Woodruff. Any further discussion?
Yes.
Commissioner
So
Pena.
as part of if a licensee is part of the enforcement on that day, they're part of the curriculum, not a participant of the continuing education.
That is a great point, yes, and that is carved out in the rule. So if you are appearing for your own contested case, you cannot obtain CE credit, though arguably you will be learning.
Part of the curriculum.
Right, that's right.
Not.
Even though it was brought to my attention, they may learn more than the other person, but yeah, that is. All right. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 29.
Agenda item number 29, discussion and possible action to adopt new 22 TAC 535.46, the Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee, or as we're calling it, the BRAC. We gotta stop saying BRWG. This new rule establishes an advisory committee called the Broker Responsibility Advisory Committee, which is tasked with advising TREC as to issues surrounding broker responsibility within the real estate industry. 9 comments were received. The executive committee considered these comments, and a copy of those comments is in your materials. 2 comments were unrelated to the proposed new rule. 5 comments were in favor of the new rule and the creation of the BRAC. Some commenters noted the importance of a diverse group of members that represent all brokers, which the executive committee noted really takes place at the selection committee level, and that those considerations are given. One commenter believed that the new committee should also include sales agents, which the executive committee did not think necessary in light of the BRAC's stated objective of examining broker responsibility. After reviewing the comments, the executive committee declined to recommend any changes to the rule as published. So the staff recommendation for this one is to authorize staff on behalf of the commission to submit for adoption new 22 TAC 535.46 as published to the Texas Register, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for adoption.
I'd like to move to approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Brown.
I second.
Second, Commissioner Lerner. Any discussion? Commissioner Hartgraves.
Yeah, is there going to be language in there that officially ends the broker responsibility working group, or because those, or officially ends upon approval, their terms would end, or and just go
Right,
away?
so that, the broker responsibility working group is actually just a working group now, so the chair can abolish that group. And then this one, and this is a good point that's related, but as an aside, the way the rule is structured, it allows for staggered initial terms. So that way there's some continuity of membership to the extent the commission wants to do that, and it gets everybody on a rolling basis. But yes, we'll take care of the broker responsibility working group itself being dissolved, but that's not one that was officially.
So you're saying that the working group members' terms would continue on the new entity?
Those that are selected. Right, they'll have to apply, but the actual abolishment of the group can be done because it's not an advisory committee.
Okay.
And you had asked about that before. I should have addressed that.
Okay. Now, the selection process will be a blank slate. All right. Any other discussion or questions? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. Love those two. Agenda item number 30, Abby Lee.
Agenda item 30 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 531.18 consumer information. So this is that concurrent regular proposed rulemaking now. The amendments to 22 TAC 531.18, as you just heard, are proposed to reflect statutory changes in House Bill 1363, which eliminated the Real Estate Inspection Recovery Fund. As a result, references to the fund are removed from the Consumer Protection Notice, and the version number in the rule is updated. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 531.18 and the form adopted by reference as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Move that the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner, second by Commissioner Pena. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item 31, I'm
31,
sorry.
yeah. Agenda item 31 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC Chapter 535 as follows. 535.4 license required. Rule 535.5, license not required. New Rule 535.35, registration of certain business entities. And 535.147, splitting fee with unlicensed person. The amendments to these rules are proposed to implement statutory changes enacted by the 88th in Senate Bill 1577, which becomes effective January 1st, 2024. Currently, under Chapter 1101 of the Occupations Code, business entities who receive compensation on behalf of a license holder must be licensed as a broker. And this sometimes came as a surprise to license holders, often sales agents, who may have been advised to create an LLC or an S Corp or similar pass-through entity at the advice of their tax professionals, like CPAs. So what Senate Bill 1577 does, it allows certain entities, these limited liability companies, LLCs, and S corporations to register with the Commission in lieu of obtaining a license. However, to be eligible for this registration, the exempted entities must perform no other act of the broker, so they can't engage in any other type of brokerage activity other than receiving that compensation, that passive act. And they must be at least a 51% owner of the entity on whose behalf the business entity receives compensation. So the proposed rules changes to 535.4, .5, and .147 reflect this statutory change. The proposed new rule, 535.35, outlines the requirements these exempt business entities must follow to register the business entity with the Commission. So the proposed rule also provides a term for the registration once it's issued, as well as an obligation to certify continuing compliance. It sets forth the fee obligations for registration and certification of continued compliance as authorized by the bill. And then finally, under the proposal, a license holder has to notify the Commission in writing not later than the 10th day after the date the business entity no longer qualifies for the exemption. So something happened, a couple months in, they no longer satisfy the elements or the requirements to be exempt. We want to know that. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments and new rule to 22 TAC Chapter 535 as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I have a couple questions on, sorry.
Point of order.
Do I?
Motion.
Oh.
Motion by Commissioner Lerner. Second. Commissioner Pena. Discussion.
Okay, thanks. Okay, on number 3, it says provide supporting documentation. What is that documentation, or has that been figured out yet?
So a lot of this process, or sort of, I call it back-end stuff, I think we'll kind of need to sit down and think about exactly what documents we'll need. But I think generally we're talking about, documentation to show, are you a 51% owner? Are you an LLC or an S corporation? Some of those elements that we need to show or that you need to prove to be eligible for the exemption. So documentation like that.
Okay, and then it says number 3C1, it says valid for 2 years. How are we going to check that? Because I know we've had some issues about that with LLCs already.
Yeah, so I think that it will be done in the system. I'm looking at Denise again. But I think that the registration will be for a set term. So it will expire after 2 years. And then the obligation on the license holder is going to be to certify, hey, this business entity still meets the requirements of this exemption. And that will go back to us, and then we would be reissued for another 2 years. If they don't certify that compliance, then the registration expires. They would need to have a license to continue to receive that compensation.
Okay. And then it says, provide supporting documentation as provided of this section if determined necessary. Determined necessary.
Yeah, so I think that's, again, that's worth that certification component. And I think it'll be depending on sort of what we get back. It may not always be necessary to ask for documentation, but we have the flexibility if we need to verify that they're continuing to satisfy the requirements, we'll have that in place. So I think it was worded that way just to provide some flexibility because it's a new process.
Okay. And if they don't give it by the 10th day, what is the consequence?
The consequence across the board, if you fail to certify compliance, if you fail to, and I'll get to the 10th day in a second. So if you fail to certify compliance, which I know was not your question, but that just means that the registration expires. If they continue to receive compensation on behalf of that business entity, they would need a license to do so. So if they don't have a license, they don't have a registration, we're talking about unlicensed activity at that point. The 10th day, so that is designed to catch those license holders and the entities in which they're creating who maybe before the 2 years expire something changes, and so if we learn later that there's you failed to notify us as required by that rule, that could be disciplinary action potentially. I don't know that we've fully thought that part through, but ultimately it's going to be, if they don't have the registration and they don't have a license, it's going to be unlicensed activity.
Okay. Thank you.
So normally as part of the verification, if you look at a company agreement with an LLC that's been filed with the Secretary of State, you'll see at the back the ownership percentages of all the members, right? That's one way. And the second way is obviously tying it back to the latest tax return that was filed for, that will show the income for that entity. And in cases when you have wholly owned LLCs, those are passed through their individual 1040. And so you'll see that in the schedule as well. So there's plenty of ability to verify whether that LLC is valid. One with the state controllers, but I guess to Leslie's point is, why would we not require that documentation up front as opposed to in case we need to? That's
well, we would with the initial when they're applying for the registration. What you're referring to is the certifying compliance. So I think it depends on what they say. If they say, oh, this element of my business has changed, I'm still eligible, but this particular element has changed, then in that situation, I think we'd want to see some sort of documentation to support that. But they would be certifying that everything is correct. If that's not the situation, they would be certifying everything remains the same, and so whether they need to submit the same documentation again, that's where that flexibility was added in the rule.
Let me ask something before I call on Commissioner Brown. This goes back to the broker. I mean, if I am paying someone in my office as an LLC, as a broker, I need to make sure that LLC stays registered with TREC, or else I'm paying an unlicensed entity. Right. So the broker is also the checkpoint, because this is only compensation only within a brokerage. Is that not correct? So if Chance's LLC is expired as a broker, I better know that, pardon my French, well before TREC does, before I pay an LLC that's unlicensed. Does that make sense? So I think that's a safeguard too. Commissioner Brown.
So, I mean, I recognize that we're rulemaking here for a bill that has already passed. And on the surface, I like the idea of it, but I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that the 49% scares me a little. Who's getting paid in that 49%? Do we have licensees going out selling shares of their business to whomever? Right. Like, it just, that that scares me a lot.
I think we've also had the issue, and we've talked about a couple of times, that we just look at the franchise tax, whatever's written on there, and these names aren't on there anymore after when they come back to renew. So I think our checks and balances need to be looked at somehow or another.
And I think that's the reason we drafted that language that way, is that as we develop the process to get feedback from the commission, to just explore exactly what it looks like, because this is a longer effective date, right? To really develop, okay, what does that certification process look like? We don't know yet because we haven't actually developed those forms. So we tried to create language that would allow that it doesn't necessarily have to be that if you want to accept the certification or if you want there to be more collection of documents, but then we have to think about how that plays into the system and the new system. So we purposefully tried to make it so that that could be an option, or it's just the certification and it carries that same penalty of if you certify and you're not being truthful in your certification, that's a different issue. But as we develop this process and what it actually looks like pen to paper, we tried to draft the rules to contemplate that, knowing that that was an important issue for you, Commissioner Lerner, and for some of the other commissioners.
That's similar to the process you go through now with the broker.
Business entity license.
Yeah, I mean, they have to show the LLC, et cetera, I mean.
Yeah, the problem with an LLC is that there's a lot of administratively to maintain an LLC, there's a lot of compliance requirements that are associated with having the privilege of operating in the state of Texas, and that includes filing your tax returns, and if you have, probably not in this case, but employees, and if you're not actively after those compliance requirements, it's very easy to get revoked and lose that privilege of operating in Texas. So the risk, and that's why, to her concern, is if we're not checking that it's an active LLC with the privilege to operate in the state of Texas, then they would not be in compliance, right? And so I think it's very important to at least add some less ambiguity. Of course, accountants like less ambiguity to things, but as opposed to attorneys. But I think it's if it gives you the leeway not to check, I'd rather have, well, no, we will verify that you're active.
Yeah.
And are maintaining that LLC.
Yeah, point taken, and we'll certainly look at that. And again, as Vanessa said, this is a new process, so as we kind of go through this, we'll learn more and improve.
Well, and that's just going to, as Scott said earlier, that's just going to add another layer to, because if they're out of compliance, then the broker's out of compliance that's paying them.
Chain reaction.
It's chain reaction, right? So I'm sitting there going, okay, so it's just another, but okay. I mean, but I think that's the other check. The broker's gonna have to be checking the same thing.
I mean, it can be time consuming, but I think it's worth the time just for protection.
Right. I agree.
Because
we check that as part of the, the onboarding packages. If they're saying right now that, they're in LLC, well, we check that, that's the broker license, so, which I don't know that any of those people will change what they're doing, because I don't really see there being any benefit to them to do that, so that's good. But the new people coming on board, there may be, to the extent, they understand this, read it, that there may be a surge of that, because of the people that may not have previously done it because of the broker license, although somehow they usually find a way, so
Well, I guess the saving grace is this is an effective date of January 1st, not September 1st, so we do have time to work it out. All right, we have a motion on the floor, discussion, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 32.
Agenda item 32 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 535.6, equitable interest in real property. So currently a person can engage in wholesaling, that is the practice of acquiring an option or entering into a contract to purchase property and then selling or assigning that interest in the contract to another without a real estate license. as long as certain disclosures are made to the buyer of the interest. The amendments are proposed to implement statutory changes enacted by the 88th and Senate Bill 1577, which requires first that the disclosure also be made to that original seller, and then second, that the disclosures be in writing. Subsection C is being removed to more closely align with the statutory language, our statutory authority, and then finally there's a non-substantive change made for consistency throughout the chapter. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 535.6 as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal, to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I move the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 33.
Agenda item 33 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 535.58, license for military service members, veterans, or military spouses. You saw a portion of this in the emergency rulemaking section. The amendments are proposed in part to implement Senate Bill 422, which first expands out-of-state occupational license recognition to include military service members. Currently, the language is limited to military spouses, as long as certain criteria are met. Senate Bill 422 also modifies the time period within which verification of good standing occurs, as well as issuance of a license after certain conditions are satisfied, from as soon as practicable to no later than 30 days. The bill also addresses the term of the license in situations of divorce or other events impacting the military spouse's status. So the proposed rule amendments reflect these statutory changes. In addition, outside of the statutory changes, as a result of education requirements being added for ERWs, easement and right-of-way agents, during the 87th legislative session, language is added to make clear that ERW applicants must otherwise comply with the requirements of 535.400 unless accepted by this rule. Additionally, language is being struck from the rule to better reflect the statutory framework under Chapter 55 of the Occupations Code. And then finally, a statement of purpose is being added to the rule to make clear that this rule addresses the requirements under state law and not federal law. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 535.58 as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal, to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I move the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner. Second, Commissioner Russell. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 34.
Agenda item 34 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 535.191, Schedule of Administrative Penalties. The amendments are proposed to address a violation of 22 TAC 535.157 relating to the obligation to respond timely. This, if you recall, was a rule adopted recently at the May Commission meeting. Under the proposed changes, a violation of 535.157 could result in an administrative penalty of $100 to $1,500 per violation per day. This proposed change is recommended by the Commission's Enforcement Committee. And the staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 535.191 as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal, to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I move the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner. Second, Commissioner Brown. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 35.
35 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC, Chapter 535, Subchapter R as follows: 535.210 fees and 535.219 Schedule of Administrative Penalties. You've already seen this one during the emergency rulemaking portion. The amendments are being proposed to reflect statutory changes enacted by the 88th in House Bill 1363, again, which eliminates the Real Estate Inspection Recovery Fund. The proposed changes to 210 reflect the fact that applications submitted as of September 1 The $10 fee will no longer be required. And the proposed changes for 219 replace a repealed statutory section with a related rule, 535.220G. The staff recommendation is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC Subchapter R as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
I move the commission approve staff's recommendation.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner, second Commissioner Lowe. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 36.
Agenda item 36 is discussion and possible action to propose amendments to 22 TAC 537.62 Standard Contract Form, TREC number OP-H, Seller's Disclosure Notice. The notice is updated to comply with the requirements of House Bill 697, which again adds a disclosure related to fuel gas piping to the statutorily required notice. The staff recommendations is to authorize staff on behalf of the Commission to submit the proposed amendments to 22 TAC 537.62 and the form adopted by reference as presented, along with any technical or non-substantive changes required for proposal to the Texas Register for publication and public comment.
Move that commission approve staff's recommendation.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Lerner, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, let's go to agenda item number 37, Chief Financial Officer Renata Williams. Welcome back.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. Renata Williams, Chief Financial Officer, for the record. Agenda item 37, discussion and possible action regarding the 2024 draft budget, the 2024 investment policy, and the 2024 budget and financial administration policy. The budget documents for this item have been provided to you under separate cover. So the budget looks like this. The Budget Committee met in July, as Commissioner Woodruff mentioned, and they reviewed the minor changes that have been made to the budget since our May Commission meeting. The budget documents that you have before you have been thoroughly reviewed by the Budget Committee and approved to be submitted to the full Commission on today. As you look through the draft, you'll notice a line item for the statutorily required GR payment, General Revenue Reserve payment. It is the General Revenue Reserve, and this is a new addition to our budget document. You will also see that our revenue projections are conservative based on a 3-year average for all fee types we collect. This has served us well to ensure that we have a realistic projection for our revenue potential in the given fiscal year and understand our threshold for deviations. Our expenditure projections account for an increase in 3 FTE, so 2 of which are going to be for the IT department, 1 will be for finance, a 3% performance-based merit, and a 3.5% across-the-board increase for all state employees. As a result of these increases, there will also be an increase in the other personnel cost category for employee benefits. There are several IT-focused projects that were included in the budget, such as the server room reconfiguration, server equipment upgrade, mailroom equipment upgrade, and website redesign. As you know, the RAMP contract has been awarded, and all expenditures for this deliverable-based contract are included in the capital expenditure category. So moving on, as a result of adding the new reserve to the GR, for the GR payment to the 2024 budget, the FY 2024 budget and financial administration policy had to be updated to reflect the creation of that new reserve. And that addition can be found at the bottom of page 5 of the budget and financial administration policy in section 107 entitled Reserves. There has been no change to the investment policy, and it is included as a part of the annual review in accordance with the Public Funds Investment Act. Staff recommendation is that the Commission approve the 2024 second draft budget, the FY24 investment policy, and the FY24 budget and financial administration policy as presented.
Commissioner Pena.
Is that the final? Will this be the final?
Yes, sir. Okay. This will.
Motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Pena. Second. Commissioner Russell. Any discussion? Will this be the final? Any other questions? All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to everybody that worked on that.
Nice job.
Yeah, lots of heavy lifting. Okay, agenda item number 38.
Yes, sir. Agenda item 38. This is a report regarding the PFIA training compliance. And so you have a report presented to you. I think it was provided on a separate cover as well as some additional documentation. So in accordance with the Texas Government Code 2256.007D, the investment officers shall prepare a report on the subchapter investment training state agency board members and officers not later than the 180th day after the last day of each regular session of legislature. This report affirms that all members of the governing board and its investment officers have attended at least one training session related to that person's responsibilities and duties under this chapter within 6 months after taking office or assuming the duties. In addition, the investment officers have attended a training session not less than once each state fiscal biennium. Copies of all training certificates are on file in my office. No motion.
All right, any questions?
So when the new members come up, 9 months after, it's 9 months after the...
They have 6 months after.
6 months?
Yes, sir, and they've all completed their training.
So all the new members?
Yes, sir.
Okay, are they included in this?
Yes, sir, on the second page.
Okay.
Did you get that second page of the document?
Okay. You may approach.
Yes, sir, everyone has completed their training as required.
Okay. There was a comment on the, one of the internal audit reports with respect to notifying the commission after everybody has gone through their rounds of training. So it's something that we have to do periodically now. So I would imagine that every August we'll have this report, right? Cool.
Yes, sir.
All right, very good, thank you. Next up, General Counsel Vanessa Burgess, agenda item number 40.
Okay, good afternoon. Agenda item 40 is discussion and possible action regarding the TREC TALCB Memorandum of Understanding. I'm purposefully removing the fiscal year component of it, and I'll get into that in just a second. So TREC and TALCB have regularly entered into memorandums of understanding to fully describe the roles and responsibilities of each agency as the legal structure and status of the agencies have changed over the years, with TALCB becoming an independent subdivision of TREC and the unified agency itself, so TREC TLCB, becoming a self-directed semi-independent state agency. That SDSI status belongs to both. Of note, there are some updates to this recent version of the MOU, and you can see the tracked changes version in your materials. And some of those changes are technical in nature, switching out the names of commissioner to executive director, et cetera. But additionally, this MOU was presented to the TALCB Executive Board, since they meet, their full meeting is after ours, and they did request that the MOU include dates related to TALCB becoming an independent subdivision and the agency obtaining its SDSI status, so we'll add those dates in. And additionally, the memorandum no longer contains an expiration date, and that way, we will not be bringing you what is essentially the same document forward every time, but it does provide for a process where the parties can terminate the agreement should the structure change at all. So this is that MOU that just clarifies who's doing what and how it's allocated in terms of TREC and TALCB together as an agency, some of the shared resources, things like that. And the thought behind removing that termination date and just allowing for there to be a process wherein the parties can do that so that you're not seeing it without changes. So the staff recommendation is to approve the TREC TALCB MOU as presented. So we will be adding those dates in.
Okay, a motion before discussion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Woodruff, second by Commissioner Pena. Okay, where they've added the language for them to becoming SDSI, give me more detail on that. They want to be an independent agency.
No, so the TALCB Executive Committee just asked that we include the date where TREC TALCB became SDSI, obtained that status, and then they also want us to put in the date when TALCB became an independent subdivision of TREC, and just the actual year.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 41, Director of Education Jennifer Wheeler.
Good afternoon, everybody. Jennifer Wheeler, Director of Education for the record. Agenda item 41 is discussion and possible action to approve the text materials for the 2024-2025 Legal Update 1 and 2 courses. These course materials were sent to you under separate cover. As always, I'm so proud of the accomplishments of this writing group. Those who participated were genuinely invested, and we had so many meaningful conversations throughout the process. Once again, we were particularly fortunate to have Chair Kestner attend our course writing meetings and are grateful for all of the insight and direction that he provided the group. So a special thank you to you again, Chair.
Very little.
Our team of subject matter experts who provided significant content and expertise to this endeavor include Carolyn Hatley, Candy Lunsman, Byron Underwood, and on behalf of the Real Estate Center, Avis Wukash and Carrie Lewis. Your dedicated TREC staff who contributed to this effort include curriculum developer Jennifer Gruby, General Counsel Vanessa Burgess, Deputy General Counsel Abby Lee, Mike Malloy, Director of Enforcement, Summer Mandel, Director of Government and Strategic Communications, Sierra Pizarro, Communication Specialist, and myself. Many thanks to everyone for the commitment of time and all the hard work put into this important effort. As always, a corresponding PowerPoint will be developed and made available prior to the instructor trainings. We will also be including several new videos and graphics into the manual prior to publication. Instructor training registration is already open and available on the Texas A&M Real Estate Center Research Center website. Currently, all the dates posted are in person. However, we are coordinating with the Real Estate Center again to offer a live stream option like we did with the broker responsibility course. With that, the staff recommendation is that you approve these text materials with any technical or non-substantive changes. This will include taking into consideration comments received from commissioners on the materials after you had received them.
I move the commission approve staff's recommendation.
I have a motion from Commissioner Lerner. Second, Commissioner Brown. Any discussion?
I think y'all did a great job. It flowed perfectly, and it was very succinct and was really well written.
Thank you for that feedback. Awesome.
I totally agree, and I won't say which commissioner, but he's from Houston. His initials are CB. And me talked about it this morning over some coffee, and there's some things that we saw, and we'll certainly get with you. I don't think anything substantive. I think a great job. I like the fair housing part of it. I think it's very important. I think with what's going on with some of the requirements with other agencies, we can meet that. But I don't think it hurts for 236,000 licensees to have a little bit more on fair housing. And I like the way y'all tied it in with homeowners association, leasing, just everything. I think overall it's a great class. I think it's going to be a lot easier class to teach. And I think a lot of times Legal 1, Legal 2, if you teach it as a provider, it's really hard. I think this is going to be a whole lot easier, not only to teach, but to engage the students. So good job. And I attended very few meetings and did very little input, but you had a great crew together. So good job on it.
You did.
Commissioner Brown.
I was just going to add that in keeping with what we did with broker responsibility last time, I love the fact that we're not just saying, here's the minimum. here's the minimum, but here's some best practices. Here's some pro tips. I liked how those were interspersed through the class, just to see if we can raise the bar a little bit. I like that a lot.
Great feedback. I appreciate it, and we'll take it back to the group.
Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item number 42, possible action or revisions regarding the Commission's Executive Director delineation of duties and policy. And Commissioner Hargraves, I will ask you to start, then we'll kind of kick it around.
Yeah, this is related to the reporting structure of the General Counsel. Right now, currently, that position is a direct report to the Executive Director. I'd like to look at changing that to either a dual reporting structure to somehow delineate the duties of the General Counsel to the Commission.
Okay. And in discussing that, it's important that as a Commission we can approach the General Counsel. At the same time, the staff is regulated by the Executive Director, but there needs to be some policy, maybe tweaking or whatever, as far as the relationship between the General Counsel and the Executive Director. And we will probably get some language on that and probably bring it before Executive, and then maybe even bring it before the Commission or a workshop or whatever. Me and Commissioner Hargraves talked about this probably 5 years, 3 months, and 2 days ago, and we're really just now getting to the point to where we can kind of look at it again. So that will be something definitely. All right. Anything on it?
I think you would want to take some action.
Okay.
A recommendation.
Have a motion to, somebody give me a motion.
I'll make a motion to submit that request to the Executive Committee to review the delineation of the Executive Director as well as General Counsel.
All right, motion made by Commissioner Vignett, second by Commissioner Woodruff. Any more discussion since we discussed it? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries. Agenda item 43, discussion of possible action regarding November workshop. Right now on the agenda, we have annual training and enforcement. We'll also talk about the calendar, setting the meetings up on the calendar, and also commission initiatives that the Executive Director mentioned earlier. And so I'll open up for any discussion on the November workshop and upcoming meetings.
We are having one, right? A November workshop?
We are having one. I will take full blame or responsibility or credit for canceling the one this month. I knew the enforcement would needed some more time and kind of tweak it, so I canceled the workshop for tomorrow with nothing but the intention of giving back some time to the commissioners and the staff, because it's been busy. And so I know that caused some travel issues, so I will apologize for that and take full responsibility. And we'll definitely try to keep the date set, but yet at the same time, if we don't need a meeting, we don't need a meeting, okay? But I'll take the blame or credit for y'all getting your own pillow tonight, okay? Either one, okay. Future meeting dates and agenda. I've got November 6th, November 7th, February 12th, and February 13th. This is the first year in a long time that we don't spend Valentine's together. I'm a little concerned about that, I'll be honest with you. Anything on that?
Thank you.
Right, get dates. And we have talked about doing some change up on that. General Counsel.
Oh, she was just whispering this in my ear. It's likely that the November workshop will be a bit extended. So it might go beyond lunch.
Okay.
Just letting that out into the universe right now.
Okay. All right. I would entertain a motion to adjourn, officially adjourn this time. Second. Motion by Commissioner Brown, second by Commissioner Pena. All in favor? Aye. Don't hear any opposed, abstaining, motion carries. We're adjourned at 1:45 p.m.